When perception is no longer divided by an observer, something profoundly simple, yet entirely unfamiliar, begins to reveal itself. There is seeing, but no one who sees. There is hearing, but no one who hears. There is awareness, but no center from which it originates. At first, this may seem abstract, but when attention is fully with what is happening, without naming, without interpreting, without referring back to memory, this quality becomes directly evident. A sound is heard, and it is complete. There is no movement to identify it, no internal voice saying what it is, no association being formed, just the sound. A sensation appears in the body, and it is felt fully, without being turned into my feeling, without being resisted, without being prolonged, just the sensation. A thought arises, and it is seen as it is, without being followed, without becoming part of a story, without forming a center around it. Just the thought. In this way, perception becomes whole, not fragmented into observer and observed, not divided into subject and object. Everything exists within the same field, undivided. This creates a different relationship with experience. There is no accumulation, because nothing is being held. There is no psychological continuity, because nothing is being carried forward as mine. Each moment is complete in itself, ending as it ends, beginning as it begins, without being linked into a narrative, without forming identity. This does not create emptiness in the way the mind once feared. It creates fullness, because nothing is missing. Nothing is being filtered. Nothing is being distorted by thought. Life is not being interpreted. It is being lived directly. And in that directness, there is a quality of clarity that cannot be achieved through effort, because it is not something created. It is what remains when division ends. When the observer is no longer separating itself from what is. This is perception without center, without boundary, without division. And in that, something becomes absolutely clear. There was never a need for an observer to experience life. The observer was the interference, the division. Now without it, what remains is simple, undivided, and complete, just as it is, now. After the illusion of control begins to dissolve, a deeper question naturally emerges, one that touches the very structure of perception itself. Who is the observer? For most of life, there is a clear sense that there is me, and there is what I experience. I observe my thoughts, I feel my emotions, I react to situations. This creates a division. An observer and the observed. This division appears natural, obvious, undeniable. But when attention begins to look more closely, something subtle begins to reveal itself. what is the observer actually made of? Is it something separate from what it observes? Or is it constructed from the same material? When a thought appears and another thought says, I am thinking, what is that I? Is it something different from thought? Or is it another thought referring to itself? When an emotion arises and there is a sense of I feel this, what is that I? Is it separate from the feeling? Or is it part of the same movement? As attention begins to observe carefully, a pattern becomes clear. The observer is not separate. It is created by thought. It is memory, identity. A collection of experiences, beliefs, and associations that form a sense of self. And that same structure is what is being observed. Thought observing thought, memory observing memory, reaction observing reaction. This means that the division between observer and observed is not real. It is constructed, created by thought as a way of organizing experience. But this construction has consequences. Because as long as there is a division, there is conflict. The observer tries to control what is observed, to change it, to improve it, to escape from it. But if the observer and the observed are the same movement, then who is controlling what? This creates a loop. Thought trying to change thought, emotion trying to control emotion. And in that loop, conflict continues. But when attention begins to see this clearly, not as an idea, but directly, something begins to shift. The division starts to dissolve, not through effort, but through understanding. Because what is false cannot continue when it is seen as false, and in that seeing, something entirely different begins to emerge. A perception without separation, where there is no observer standing apart, only observation itself. When the division between observer and observed begins to dissolve, something very unusual starts to take place in perception. At first, it may not be immediately recognized, because the mind is so accustomed to operating through separation that its absence feels unfamiliar. But gradually, something becomes clear. There is observation, but no observer. Experience is still happening. Thought still appears. Emotion still arises. Sensation still moves through the body. But there is no longer a center claiming ownership of it. No I standing apart, watching, evaluating, or trying to change what is happening. There is only what is happening, seen directly, without distance, without division. This changes the entire nature of experience, because conflict depended on separation. The observer trying to control the observed. But now that structure is not active. So the effort to change, suppress, or manipulate what is happening begins to fall away, not because it is resisted, but because there is no longer a separate entity to carry it out. There is no controller, no judge, no interpreter standing apart, only the movement itself and the awareness of it as one. This creates a different quality of attention, one that is not focused, not directed, but open, inclusive. Everything that arises is part of the same field. Nothing is excluded, nothing is resisted, nothing is pursued. In this state, thought may still appear, but it does not create a center. It arises and passes. Without forming a narrative around a me, emotion may still move through the body, but it is not turned into identity. It is not claimed. It is not held. It unfolds and ends. This is not detachment. It is not distance. It is actually a deeper intimacy with experience. Because there is no barrier, no separation, no observer standing in between. Life is no longer experienced as something happening to someone. It is simply happening. And in that, something becomes evident. The sense of self that once felt so central was part of the structure of thought, a construct, a process, not an entity. And without that construct dominating perception, something entirely different begins to emerge. A quality of awareness that is not personal, not limited, not defined, but simply present, without center, without boundary, without division. And in that, something very quiet becomes possible. A way of experiencing life where there is no longer an internal separation. No longer a constant movement of me and what is happening. Only what is, as it unfolds